Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to Streams of Hope. It's great to be with you online today, and you'll see that Pete and I are both with you today. We're really looking forward to sharing with you for a few minutes. If you're on Facebook, why not tag a friend in the comments? Why not host a watch party so more people can watch along with us? But if you're on Facebook or YouTube, please say hi to us in the comments. We'd really love to know how you're doing, what you think of what we're sharing about today. And I just want to remind you of a couple of things before we go any further. Today our pastoral phone lines will be open from 12 until 2. We'd really love to encourage you to use this service. We're making this available to absolutely anybody. So if you have something you'd like to talk about, someone you'd like to pray with for whatever, or if you just want a general chat with someone who is familiar to you, or at least just a friendly smiling voice on the side of the on the other end of the telephone, then please just give us a really quick call, 01522 694 694, or email your contact details to office@life-church.co.uk, and we'd really love to chat with you. Also, another thing coming up this Friday, 8 p.m. on Facebook Live, we're going to be having our latest Q&A. This week, we're going to be looking at the really important question of work-life balance. How do I get a work-life balance? Is there such a thing as work-life balance? I really want to encourage you, whoever you are, whether you are of someone who works or not. You might be someone who's a student, you might be retired, you may be a carer, and so you may be caring for people during the week, rather than members of your family or whoever, rather than being in a paid employment. I really do think there'll be a lot of crossover, so this will be relevant to absolutely anybody. So I really encourage you to tune in for that, 8 p.m. on Friday. Of course, we've got streams every day at 11. We've got a service, online service on Sunday as well. We're really looking forward to that. We'll get more details about that on Facebook and other social media platforms as the week goes by. Please stay tuned to that. Please drop us an email if you don't receive our weekly update email, and we'd really love to get you on the mailing list for that so you can find out what we're up to. So today, Pete and I thought it'd be really good if we just both have a chat, and we're going to talk about where we really are at the minute. We thought it'd be really good. This would be a really good opportunity to take stock of where we are at the moment, to think about one or two things that are going through our minds and our world at the moment. Last Sunday, we had the news from 10 Downing Street that things are remaining pretty much the same, that there are one or two changes that do affect us. Sadly, nothing really affects church in the sense that we're still unable to meet on Sundays, but we are able to meet in life groups through Zoom meetings. We're going to keep doing these streams of hope until further notice. And it's been a great pleasure to be able to connect with all of you through that. But maybe, Pete, you could share a few thoughts on where you're at the moment.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting time, isn't it, as we kind of do take stock of where we are and where we're going as well, because it's becoming apparent that this road back to whatever normal looks like, and that phrase new normal's gone around a lot, hasn't it? And we're still kind of wondering and figuring out what it might be. But that road back to whatever that normal is going to be a long one, and probably phased returns, and what that will look like for us as community, as church, in our workplaces, in our schools, and all of those questions are all up in the air. And so we find ourselves now, don't we, in that time where we're kind of thinking about the future and what that will mean for us and how long it's going to be until we can pick up our lives as they were. And really, my thoughts around this are that as church and as Christians and as people who are here for a reason, are here for a purpose, and who are here for a mission, really we can't afford to wait until we get back to whatever normality may look like. Our mission is still the same. You know, God is still calling us to go into all the nations, make disciples of those nations, and teach them to obey the things that he's called us to do. He's still calling us to heal the sick, to raise the dead, to cast out demons. He's still calling us to be the church, to be light and life and salt and light in the world. And so we need to begin to think about, how do we do that effectively at this time? And I'm sure, you know, we've seen a lot of that already over this past sort of, what's it, nearly 50 days now we've been in this lockdown period, in this country at least. And we've seen a lot of that shift into this kind of this kind of content, this online content that we're doing here, and lots of other people up and down the country are doing as well. But really, we have to consider, okay, so how do we now effectively carry out that same mission that God has given us? He knew this was coming. He saw this this virus and this lockdown period. He knew it was going to happen, but he didn't change the rules. He didn't give us a different mission or anything like that. So there's a way for us to be effective at this time, and we've seen some really encouraging signs of that in the media and in the news, and even in the data that we have access to here at Life Church. Lots more people connecting with what we're doing, people connecting with churches up and down the land, people searching, Googling about prayer more than they ever have before. A quarter of the adult population of the UK engaging with some form of religious content online during this period as well. So there's some really encouraging signs and people and an openness to engage with faith and to discuss the kind of the big questions of life at this time. And so for us, I think it's really important that we really think about how we can be effective as individual Christians at this time to share our faith, to get our message out there, to share hope, to share faith, to share love with people, and to think about how we're going to do that on an ongoing basis as well, because this is no longer a stopgap thing. We're not waiting for this to pass. We're right in the middle of it and it's not going anywhere. And so I think maybe it'd be good if we could just have a little conversation about some of those thoughts today. And, right away, some initial thoughts that spring to my mind is that how do we do digital evangelism effectively? What does that look like for us as we kind of live a lot of our lives in this digital sphere? And I'm going to talk a lot about that because, we're delivering this content in a digital format. And so I'm going to talk probably a lot more about the digital side of things than the physical side of things. And that's not to say there isn't things we can do physically. You can still pick up the phone, we can write letters, we can make sure our neighbors are okay and things like that. But digitally, what does digital evangelism look like? And even just now, some thoughts like, you can put a post on your Facebook page, for instance, that says, hey, I'm going to be praying for people for the next hour. Pop a comment in my post and I'll pray for you, even if you're not somebody who doesn't pray. Or maybe, how about this for an idea? What about taking out your phone, something that all of us have, most of us have, and shooting a little 2-minute testimony video? This is my story. This is how I met Jesus. This is how he changed my life. And popping that video up on your Instagram or up on your Facebook account and sharing that with your friends, because we've been using this phrase, it's never been easier. It's never been easier to invite someone to church. It's never been easier to share your testimony. It's never been easier to invite your friends to share something with you that you can pray about for them. And so there's so many opportunities open to us at the moment to effectively do digital evangelism. And so I want, maybe James, you've got some ideas about that as well that you'd like to share, even if it's not the digital side of stuff, of how we can be effective evangelists at this time.
Yeah, well, you've already given us some brilliant ideas, Pete. There's one or two other things I can think of. You can just text people and say, can I pray for you? Or would it be okay if I pray for you? Or is there something you'd like me to pray for? One of the things I love doing as well is sharing church things on Facebook and Twitter. I really, really love it on Sundays now. I think the last 2, if not 3 Sundays, I was going to do it before that, but I had a bit of a technical hiccup. But on Facebook, when our service, the message part of our online service came on, I did a watch party. Some of the people who were watching what I was watching, all it does is it allows people to watch the video that you're watching. So it's like you become the host for that video, whatever it is you're watching. And some of the people who were watching it, I was like, oh my word, I can't believe they're watching it. And even if they only watch it for a second or two or for a minute, they don't necessarily have to watch the whole thing. But if they catch a glimpse of something that makes them think, catch a glimpse of something to do with Jesus, something to do with the fact that Jesus saves, the gospel, the power of God, the love of God, whatever it may be, the power and ability of God to save. You don't know what difference that might make. It's the concept, isn't it, Pete, of the seed being planted. And one of the other things I love to do as well is to go on to the YouVersion app. There are other apps and things like that available, but put together an image based around an encouraging Bible verse. there was one that I put together the other day. I can't remember the exact psalm, but it just said, I was fearful and the Lord freed me from my fear. And I put it up there and I got a few people liking it, a few people engaging with it. You just don't know whether it's someone who is a Christian, somebody who's not a Christian, how much that might encourage them. I think we've just got to use this time to try to be a bit creative and sometimes sit down, maybe with a blank sheet of paper and say, Lord, I've got the will here. Will you give me the way? Will you give me the people you want me to try and encounter? Whatever I do, will you please sharpen it and propel it forward so it can really help and encourage people? You can even just Google digital evangelism, because I think now more than ever, it's going to become a bigger thing than ever before. But it's so encouraging that there's so many people. There's around about a quarter of the UK's population now who since the lockdown started, have engaged in an online church service, which is way above the attendance stats that you'd normally get at church. It's normally between about 6 and maximum about 10% across the UK. To have it more than double and treble in that situation during this time we've had is incredible. Don't you think so, Pete? That shows us a time for everything, doesn't there?
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. And you just reminded me of something really great there, where you likened the digital evangelism there to the sowing of seed, and it reminds me of the parable of the sower and the image of the farmer going out and liberally sowing the seed, flinging it all over the place, basically. And that's where we get the word broadcast come. That's where we get it from. It's that method of sowing seed, like broadly casting the seed. And it's never been easier to broadcast your faith than it is now. And so it's a great opportunity for us to get out there and be overt with our faith, because the soil is so fertile. And we've never had a better evangelistic opportunity. I think you were saying to me earlier, Gavin Calver had been saying this, he's the head of the Evangelical Alliance. He says, we've never had a better evangelical opportunity than we do now. And so we've never had a better opportunity to broadcast our faith. And we've never had better platforms to do that either, actually, with our social media channels and all of the other interactions that we have online. We have a massive opportunity to broadcast our faith and to get it out there and to encourage people that there is hope in a time like this. And actually, a lot of people will have found that the foundations of their life, things that they've built their faith on and their trust on, they probably found them to be a little bit wobbly during this time. Actually, a lot of people take for granted things like their health, things like their security, things like their employment and their income and things like that. And all of those kinds of things have been affected by what we've all been going through together. And so right now is a time when people are examining the foundations of their life. And so we as Christians, we have the opportunity to say, hey, look, this is what I build my life upon. And not only what I build my life upon, this is who I build my life upon. And this is why I'm able to say, come what may, whether it's wind, whether it's rain, whether it's a storm, whether I have a lot, whether I have a little, I know that I can stand firm because my foundation is set, it's firm, it's a rock, it's not sand. I built my house upon this rock. And so we have that opportunity to share our faith at this time in a way that connects with people who are asking these kinds of big questions. And I think for us as a church as well, there's some questions to ask around how do we as Live Church, for example, in our location, how do we adapt to the way that we do things to enable digital evangelism and this kind of to take full effect of the time that we find ourselves in. I think, as you were saying, there's a time for everything, and the time that we find ourselves in right now is a time to broadcast, is a time to liberally sow the seeds. And so there's questions around us as a church, that how do we support our people as we do that? How do we make it easy for people to point people towards a place where they can take the next step on their journey? We talked all about that journey, didn't we, last week, of discovering who God created you to be. And so we want to encourage people to encourage their friends to go on that journey. And so we want to make it easy for you to be able to say, hey, here's a place where you can go on that journey. Here's a place where you can get connected to a community which will help you on that journey. Here's a place where you can get connected into some great resources where you can grow on that journey and find out who God created you to be, and then thrive as that person as well. And there's a few ways you can point people towards what we're doing. One of the easiest ways you can kind of connect people to us. And it's another way to kind of, I guess, do a little bit of digital evangelism is on our Facebook page. Go and invite your friends to like our Facebook page. It's a really easy thing you can do. It's a one-click method of inviting people to get connected to us, and they'll be able to tune into these kinds of messages and to see what we're doing and to ask the kind of questions they want to ask and get encouragement for the journey as well. And hopefully, doing that, yes, you might only get 1 or 2 of your friends who engage with that, or maybe even nobody. But again, it's sowing the seed. It's being liberal with it, and it's broadcasting it wide. I don't know if you want to come in on any of that stuff.
Yeah, do you know what though, Pete? To really encourage everyone out there, and I know you've done this, and I've done this as well. But one of the things I've found with people who have gone on our page and on our Facebook page and they've invited people to like it. I went through and I selected people who I thought there was a good chance that they'd say yes, and a lot of them did. But do you know what my wife Kelly did? I would take my hat off to her. She's a great evangelist. She just clicked invite everyone, and the number of people who've liked our page because of that one click that she did was absolutely incredible. I mean, she was totally unashamed. She was like, everyone knows I'm a Christian. If they say yes, great. If they say no, or if they ignore the thing saying like our page, don't matter. At least I've asked them. Because the thing that the farmer never does, isn't this right, Pete? When I know they sow seed using machinery these days, but if you were broadcasting seed by hand, you don't look at every seed, do you? And look at it and say, I'm only going to broadcast you. I'm only going to throw you on the soil if I can be sure that you're going to produce a harvest. You don't say that, do you? You broadcast the seed. The reason I say that is that we shouldn't ever, when we want to go and share Jesus with someone, we shouldn't ever not do it because we're worried they'd say no. Because if they say no, then that's not your problem. If they say yes, great. But if they say no, or maybe, or I'll think about it, or whatever, that's between them and God. Because ultimately, all we are called to do by God is to sow the seed. He just says, sow the seed, sow the seed, sow the seed. What we should take responsibility for is, as it says in 1 Corinthians 3, about planting and watering, we should seek to plant in the right way. So we shouldn't just go and batter people over the head with Bibles and say, you must become a Christian or else. Or hold a gun to someone's head and say Jesus is Lord of your life now, or that's it. What we should do is we should seek to share it in the message in a loving way, in a kind way, in an exciting way. Get people excited. Just say to people, this has changed my life, this message. You don't even be having to be having a great day to say it, but just say this has changed my life. And I really think it could you too. You don't need to get into the whole thing of how true something is or isn't, because the best testimony for something is a changed life.
Yeah, that's really good. I was just going to say, you just brought something to my mind, which is so important to mention. And I know we've talked a lot already about how you can connect people with Life Church, for example. But what I wanted to say was, don't broadcast church, broadcast Jesus. Don't broadcast church, broadcast Jesus, because Jesus is the thing that changes lives. Church is great and I love it, and it's wonderful to be part of a church like ours, and I love the people who are part of our church, and I love working for the church and being able to spend my life kind of dedicated to it and helping to nurture the growth that's there. But we're called to broadcast Jesus. We're not called to broadcast the church. We need to tell people about Jesus and the difference that he makes. And you can do that so easily. Like you were saying, like, here's the best demonstration of the power of Jesus is your life transformed. And again, I would encourage you to record that testimony video. It might be well outside your comfort zone to just take out your phone and do a little 2-minute video and say, hey, I'm just going to share how Jesus has changed my life with you today. And just lay it out really simply. Say, hey, this is what my life was like before. This is the moment that I met Jesus, and this is the difference that he's made. And you can just lay out your testimony like that. It can be something super simple, but you don't know the power that it has. Testimony connects people to God like nothing else. It's so powerful, and it unleashes faith inside of people to say, hang on a minute, how amazing is it that God did something like that in this person's life? And I know that person. I've seen firsthand the difference that actually that it's made as well. Or I never would have believed they used to be like that, because I've only ever known them like this. And that testimony, that really is a powerful, powerful thing you can do, especially when you point people towards Jesus with it and not the church. So I just wanted to, I don't want to butt in on you, but I wanted to make it really clear.
Yeah.
Broadcast Jesus, don't broadcast the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we shouldn't ever say that church isn't important, but ultimately, if it wasn't for Jesus, there would be no church.
Yeah.
So if we just broadcast ourselves, then it doesn't make sense. It's not the right thing to do. We share the message of Jesus and say to people, actually, the church is the community of Jesus. The church is the Christians gathered together, Christians being together rather than separate. And so church, please don't mishear us. Church is massively, massively important. It's what so many of us are giving our lives for. But more than that, we give our lives for Jesus, to Jesus, and for him, for his cause. Because if it wasn't for him, all of this would be meaningless, wouldn't it? It would be absolutely meaningless. And talking of meaningless, I've just been reading through my, I'm in a Bible plan at the moment. I've just been reading through the book of Ecclesiastes, and you will see if you read that book, it's kind of a decent chunk. It's just over halfway through in your Bible. And if you kind of jump right to the halfway point, there's a good chance you'd get to Ecclesiastes. And there's this word that is used over and over and over again in it. It says this: meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. And I was saying to Pete earlier, I don't know if you've read Ecclesiastes before, you might want to go and read it. You can read it in one of two ways, because really what it talks about is the fact that God's in control and that we need to make Jesus the center of our lives. We need to make God the center of our lives. And without it, life is meaningless. So you can read it one of two ways. You can either read it like, oh my word, this is a depressing read, or you can read it as kind of a gradual journey towards the fact that what it says right at the end, which is just that God is, the punchline isn't right in the middle, it's right at the end. It basically says we need to make God the center of our lives, and when we do, that's when we find meaning. That's when this meaninglessness will not be a factor for us anymore. We will have purpose, we'll have life, we'll have a life beyond the grave and everything like that. In Ecclesiastes 3, it says there's a time for everything. There's a season for every activity under heavens. You may have heard this before. You may have read it yourself. It says a time to be born and a time to die and a time to plant and a time to uproot and everything like that. And what it's really saying is that there is a time for everything. There's a season for everything. But ultimately, everything is under the control of God's mighty hand. And I think it's pretty clear now that with you look at this virus and everything that it's done to us as a world, let alone just as a city or a church or a nation, look at what it's done to us as a world. We're not in control of any of this stuff. We're in control of very, very little. So what I want to encourage you to do today is to think about putting your life into the hands of the one who's really in control, and that's God. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I think that's you've hit the nail on the head. I think we do have very, very little control over our own lives, and we have, the circumstance that we find ourselves in has brought that to light most. Probably the most that any of us have ever experienced. It's highlighted to us that we had that lack of control in our own lives about what happens to us. And so, putting out, like we were saying earlier, building your life on a firm foundation is so important. And at this moment in time, when those foundations are being shaken, it's revealing to everybody, I think, not just us as Christians, but to everybody, that, what we actually have built our foundations on is being revealed to us. And those who have built their house on shaky foundations are finding out that now, that actually the things they thought were firm aren't actually that firm. They can be undone by something you can't even see, something so small you would think it was, didn't have any power inside of it whatsoever, but actually it's shaking the world's foundations right now. But what that does is it does produce that fertile soil, and so that's why, again, I think it's so important that we are sowing seed at this time. As people of faith, this is our opportunity like never before to sow that message of saying, hey, look, there is a place, there is a firm foundation that you can build your life on. And like you were saying, everything without Jesus is meaningless. All of the things that we strive for, all of the things that we seek to attain, all of the good things in life that we go after, if we don't have Jesus, then they're meaningless. They don't mean anything, because Yes, we might enjoy them for a little while, but without Jesus, what then? You know, without Jesus, what happens at the end of our days when we, you know, when we shut our eyes and we breathe our last? Without him, what happens then? It's all utterly meaningless, isn't it? But with Jesus, you know, we have that meaning there, and we have that firm foundation to build upon, and we have something extraordinary to share with other people. We have something that changes our life, literally transforms the way that we think, the way that we experience our life, the way that we see things inside of our own experiences, and the trials and the struggles that we walk through in our lives as well. It changes our perception of those as well. And so when you have that relationship with Jesus and you have him kind of in your boat, living inside of you, then it changes those things as well. And it provides you that firm foundation, and it changes everything that was previously meaningless without him now takes on brand new meaning with him.
Yeah, so good, Pete. And I think the fact it can't be coincidence, can it? That it can't just be that people have got more time on their hands, that you get this 6 to 10% attendance of people at church on a regular basis, and then suddenly that jumps to a quarter of the nation just in lockdown time. I mean, it must be that people are asking these questions. I mean, we've had messages into the church and people are interacting with us just saying, it's kind of, this situation's made me question a few things. Where do I start? And some of the things we've talked about, and it has been like, how do we make it easier for people who are seeking God? How do we make it really absolutely crystal clear? This is your roadmap. This is where you go. This is where you find out about stuff. And I think, just as we kind of draw our time to a close, it must just be that God is in control, and that God is using this time really to, while he didn't send this virus, the way he's working through it is that he's allowing people the opportunity really to be in a kind of a quieter space and a less busy space where they can ask these questions. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's a time of huge introspection. I think people are actually looking at their lives and considering, when something like this happens and it shakes everything that you've known and the way that you've operated, and it affects the freedoms that you thought you'd have forever, and that we just take for granted, especially in the Western world here. When something like this happens, it causes you to ask these kind of big questions. It's the same kind of experience you might get if you have a life-threatening illness, or war breaks out in your country, or you get hit by a bus and you're lucky enough to recover. It's the same kind of experience you have. You start asking those big questions of, why am I here? What is the meaning of life? What is my purpose here? And what happens to me when I die? And all these kinds of big questions that we perhaps put off because we'd rather not think about them. This moment in time is causing people to think about them. And that is a good thing. That is no doubt about it. That is a good thing, because these are huge questions that affect not just our eternal destinies, but our present experiences right now as well, our lives that we're living right now. Those kinds of questions affect the way that we think about things, the way that we behave towards other people, the way that we live out our own lives, and the values that we hold as well. And so it's a good thing that people are asking these questions, and it's a great opportunity for us to be able to connect people with connect people with Jesus, because he has the answers basically. Yeah. He is the one who's gonna make all of these things make sense, and he is the one who's going to give everybody a firm foundation to build their life on, and to answer those kinds of questions and start to tackle those big questions of life. Is the best person you can choose to go on that journey with. And so if in whatever way we can, as people who already know him, in whatever way we can at the moment, we need to point people to him. And we need to say, hey, look, at this moment in time, when you're asking the biggest questions, when you're thinking about these huge topics, when you're examining the way that you've lived, how you want to live in the future, and all of the things that are happening to us right now, here is the best person you can possibly go on that journey of discovery with. And so it's really incumbent upon us as people who already know Jesus to point others to him now, perhaps more than ever in our lives before. And for us as the church, the wider church, and for us as church leaders and people who have influence in how church operates, there is a massive responsibility on our shoulders to ensure that we are doing the right thing at the right time, and to align ourselves with what God is doing at this moment as well, and to support that that opportunity that we have to make it as easy as possible for people to share their faith, and then to put support structures in place for those people who want to go on that journey of exploration. And so that's something that we're going to be working really hard on at Life Church is, how do we put things in place so that people can go on that journey of discovery, finding out who God created them to be, about finding out about who Jesus is, and about how they can have the most amazing, life-changing, transformational relationship with him possible. And so we're going to be working, you and I, James, we're going to be working really hard on that. Other people around, up and down the country as well. We're going to be working really hard to make sure that whilst we're in a period of physical lockdown, how do we support all of these things and put the right structures in place so that people can go on that kind of journey. And it's something I'm super excited about, as you can maybe tell. It really floats my boat of looking at these kinds of new things and new ways of engaging people with the most incredible, timeless message that Jesus wants to have a life-changing relationship with you. And so, yeah, I'm excited about where we go from here, but I'm super conscious about the fact that we are where we find out where we are. We are where we are. We find ourselves in this situation, and we have this incredible opportunity that we need to capitalize on right now.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Pete. And yes, your enthusiasm came across loud and clear, which is great. It's good when you're enthusiastic about stuff. The thing that I could just share as we close is that we're talking about when we talk about Jesus, we're not talking about someone who is far off. We're not talking about a dead God. We're not talking about an imaginary God. We're not talking about someone who may or may not be off there in the deep blue yonder, sort of sitting on a white cloud or somewhere like you may have this idea of. It's proven fact that Jesus has already been here. And if you listen to what Jesus said about himself, Jesus was God incarnate. And I want to encourage you this morning, and maybe you could pray that prayer for us, Pete, as we close. I want to give you an opportunity to know that Jesus, because he is someone you can properly put your eternal faith and trust in. When at the minute there is nothing we can really trust in at all. We can't trust in vaccines. We can't trust in our, we honour but can't put our complete trust in politicians or people to keep us safe or anything like that. But we can put our trust in God, who has already been to earth and chose to become one of us. The unique thing about Jesus compared to anybody else is that he was God, but he also chose to make himself completely human, completely vulnerable in a vulnerable shell of a human body, and experience everything we experience, good and bad. So we can't say when we go through difficult times that God hasn't been there, because he has. He's been through times of abandonment and emotion and heartbreak, and he's also been through times of deep joy and bliss and happiness. And he's someone that you can put your faith and trust in today. And I encourage you, whoever you are, even if it's just to recommit yourself to Jesus, maybe could you lead us in that prayer now, Pete? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And if you are somebody who prays this prayer for the very first time today, I want to encourage you to, great that you've done it, but don't leave it at that. Get in contact with us. Drop us a direct message to our Facebook page, or pop in the comments, or send us an email. In whichever way you want to contact us, please do, because we want to follow up with you after you've made this most incredible decision of your life. So if you do want to make that decision today, I want to encourage you just to repeat after me as I pray this prayer. Father God, I come to you now, and I am sorry, Lord, for the things in my life that I've done that have took me away from you. And Lord, I want to have a life-giving, life-changing relationship with you. I thank you for Jesus. I thank you that he came and he lived as we lived, and he died on a cross to take away my sin. I accept the free gift of salvation that's on offer today, and I thank you and welcome Jesus as Lord and Saviour into my life. Amen.
Amen. That's brilliant, Pete. And if you've just prayed that prayer for the first time, you've made the best decision you'll ever make. absolutely guarantee you that. And if you've prayed it to recommit yourself to Jesus, then brilliant, go for it, live for him today. And I just want to pray generally for everyone on this stream. Lord, I pray you will be with these people today. I pray that you will go before them. I pray, Lord, you will inspire them to reach out to people, inspire them to go deeper in their relationship with you. Lord, by the time we're all back together again on that day when we all hope for, that we all look forward to, when we can have some kind of a new normality in church. Lord, I really pray that we'll all be further forward. I pray we'll look at one another and we won't be able to recognise one another, because we'll be like, wow, you've been spending time with God, haven't you? So I pray you'll bless your people and empower them today in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, that's all we've got time for today on Streams of Hope. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Again, don't forget our pastoral phone lines, 12 till 2 today. The numbers will be in the comments. We'd really encourage you to give us a call or drop us an email. And we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 11 a.m. And don't forget Q&A this Friday on work-life balance, but applicable to everyone on Facebook Live. We're looking forward to seeing you then. But take care, God bless, and have a fantastic rest of the day.